Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to episode 7 of Oban Star Racers. So yeah, we're here with another episode, and I'm really interested to see where they take this at this point. I want to really quickly go over the biggest positive and negative that I have with the series at this point. The positive that I have is that it's interesting. It has an interesting premise, an interesting idea, and it seems to really like to give some unique twists and turns on the characters and the just general plot. How each race goes, they have like these different little special things going on in each race. The different races of aliens and whatnot. Like last time we had that thing that like had the alien that had the cat monitor head, and it ran its ship by a DDR pad basically, and that was hilarious. And of course we have the prince, who we haven't seen for a few episodes, and I definitely haven't seen for a while because I had dropped the series before. And so on and so forth. Even the human characters are fairly interesting. The downside is the original reason I dropped the show, basically, the first time. It's not really going anywhere or doing anything. The fact is, it's really, really slow-paced. By showing every single race in this qualifying round, basically, for the Oban race, it ends up coming across as really poorly paced. Like, you don't need to show every single race. Hell, have an episode where it's just a montage of a bunch of the races. Only show a couple of them in their entirety. By showing every single race like this, it's padding out time. This is a series that could easily be somewhere between 12 and 24 episodes. But I think it's like a lot longer than that, actually. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe I can check. I think I have it on my my anime list currently. I should, at least. Let me just check that. Okay, it's 26 episodes. So it's like at the very top of my kind of threshold for normal anime length to be. But honestly, I could completely see this being much less. Like 20 episodes. Like the 24 to 26 is like the absolute max I could see this being, but that's mainly because of padding it out. Without all of this padding, they could probably make this a 12-episode series. Because let's be honest, it's like, okay, we have the qualifier race, everything leading up at the beginning, and then the qualifying races could be the course of 2 or 3 episodes. They really could. And then you have probably the main races. And, of course, all the character development and moments that go through that. That could be like the bulk of the anime, which would make more sense. So, let's say the first 2 to 3 episodes are the qualifiers and everything that leads up to them. Then the next 8 episodes are the main race and everything, the main races, the Oban races and all that, or whatever they're called. The main races, though, the big ones, everything that's been qualified for up to this point. That would be 8 episodes. All the big character development and stuff would happen in that. And then the final, like, 2-3 episodes or so at that point would be basically just the aftermath of everything. The final race, maybe, and where it all leads, like what the wish is used for, which at this point, honestly, I think it's obvious where that's going to go. Like, it's obvious that our Earth team is going to win, and the wish is going to probably be used to bring back Ava's mother, or Molly, or whatever you want to call her. Probably going to be used to bring back her mother. I'm also guessing that at this point, the entire thing with the father not knowing who she is, that big reveal is probably going to wait till the end. It's going to be like Little Witch Academia, where the big reveal is just continuously dragged on, even though it really has no point to be. And then it's going to reveal it at the end. Although, unlike Little Witch Academia, I don't think this one's going to be as satisfying with that. Because Little Witch Academia, it did take way too long to reveal it, but the reveal itself was actually done really well. And it actually gave a reason why it took so long. Even if it's still irritating that it did. And it definitely still is an issue with the series, but it at least gave a reason and made it understandable. It's not as bad as it could have been. I don't think Oban is going to do the same thing, because this is an older series. And it's already obvious that this series does fall into a lot of the traps of shows of anime from those days. It's not going to be it's not like Shaman King, which back in those days, in that time period's anime, was actually one of the more groundbreaking ones, because it was so different and unique in so many ways. It's more just akin to the anime from those days that did make it onto American television and were very much Americanized. You could, I guess, even add the 4Kids dubs of a lot of anime to that kind of pool. But more so the, like, notably bad ones, like the One Piece one. Because, like, the Yu-Gi-Oh! 4Kids dub actually wasn't too bad, all things considered. But, like, the One Piece 4Kids dub, oh yeah, like, that would definitely be more comparable. In terms of falling into a lot of the same traps, using a lot of the same cliches and just ridiculousness. And honestly, like, as I said when I first started this is a show I knew about back when it was airing on American television on Saturday mornings and stuff. I knew about it. I never actively watched it, though, because I was never interested. It was around that time I was watching stuff more like Yu-Gi-Oh! And whatnot. So it's like, I was never interested in this show back then. And watching it now, it's like, it definitely falls into those issues. And the main one being how slow it is and how heavily it focuses on things that really don't need to be focused on. If this series were remade for modern day, in the same way that Fruits Basket is, or if it were just in general, if it just came out in the modern day, in the modern era, it would not be this long. It would probably be a 12 or 13 episode series, because they would very likely not have all of this padding. Because, I mean, even though I loved last episode, for example, it's like, it was really unnecessary. Last episode was basically filler. Yes, it was another one of the races in this qualifying round, but that's about it. That's the only thing that really connected it to the main story. And, of course, there was the little bit at the end with Don Wei talking to the president and everything about the wish and all. And yes, that was important, but that could have been delivered in so many different other ways. That really didn't have to be delivered in in an episode that otherwise was completely random and pointless and felt really out of place, let's be honest, compared to everything else. So it's just like, the best episode of the series so far has been a filler episode. But yeah, the reason I'm bringing all this up and everything is because I have had mixed feelings coming into this episode this week. Having last week off and everything, we took last week off on Wednesday for various reasons. And it's just at this point, I've come to realize, it's like, even though last week's episode was good, it's like I'm still not super invested in this since bringing it back, or not last week's episode, but 2 weeks ago. The last episode, again, it was good, but it didn't invest me in the series. It didn't get me super excited to see what comes next. And don't get me wrong, my interest in the series isn't like dropping to zero quite yet. It isn't like really, I'm not losing my interest completely, but it's kind of, it's hovering lower than I honestly would hope it would be at this point, especially after, again, enjoying the last episode. And I'm really hoping that this episode doesn't really drop it even further. Because I don't want to drop the show again, especially this soon after restarting it. But as I've said, I will only do so. I'll only drop the show again if I really feel like I'm just not enjoying it. I'm just have no desire to continue either watching or reacting to it specifically. But I really don't want that to be the case, especially since it is a it is a donation reward. As I've said before, I don't want to just drop donation rewards all willy-nilly. It really has to be like, I really have to feel like I really have no interest. And I'm really hoping it doesn't get to that point. But I'm just telling you guys now, my interest in it right now is not that high. It's not like that low, but it's less than what I would say is half percent, 50%. It's like less than that at this point, I would say. And again, I'm not really like fully utilizing the percentages anymore, but just as a way to like quantify it to some degree. Yeah, it's just I'm not invested. And I'm just not finding a lot of reason or excitement to want to continue. But that could change. And I'm really hoping it does. I'm really hoping that this episode proves me wrong. Because technically the last one did. It definitely turned me around a lot. And raised my interest a lot. But unfortunately, because the last episode did feel like a filler, I'm not sure everything's going to be like that. What I think the best option at this point would be to have the big reveal of Ava being Don's daughter. I think it would be best to have that reveal before the halfway point. I'm still not thinking they're going to do that, but I think that would be the best option in terms of the storytelling. Because otherwise, again, just like with Little Witch Academia, it just drags on, and it gets annoying to the viewer to have to, like, basically know the secret from the very beginning and them not do anything with it until near the very end. That's just not good. That's not a good thing to do. Especially when they keep playing around with it all the time. I think it would be best if they revealed it before the halfway point. Like, not even at the halfway point, before the halfway point. And that it would change the dynamic of things and would actually make Dawn Wei even more cautious about letting her race. Because, specifically because of who she is. But at the same time, without another pilot, he would have no choice, and he'd just be like a big ball of nerves the entire time. And he would still be strict, still be very high-strung and very, not really mean, that's not really the word, but very aggressive, let's put it that way. Aggressive towards her, but not out of like any kind of negative intent. And I don't even think it's technically out of negative intent currently, but especially not after that. It would be more of just fear. And it would very much tell us that, even if he doesn't directly tell her that. It would tell us, the audience, by maybe showing a scene of him alone just freaking out over things, or getting to see what he's thinking or hear what he's thinking while Ava's racing in the middle of a race. Like, that would actually be fantastic for his character. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen. Because again, this is a older series that falls under the traps of those older shows. It's going to take a very cliche route, do things very old school and just not good in terms of the storytelling. And it's going to just make a lot of mistakes here, I feel. I would love to be proven wrong. I would love for this to actually subvert a lot of my expectations like Shaman King did, but I don't think it's going to. We'll just have to see. I will say that this episode would have to be notably bad or irritating or just really bother me in some way to make me drop it at this point. Because, again, it's less than what I would say would be the 50% margin, but it's not low enough to where it's like drop worthy at the moment. So, or even like on cautious warning for that. But yeah. And again, I just wanted to get this all out of the way here right now, because I want to always let you guys know where my thoughts on all of these shows I'm reacting to lie as it goes. Because again, I'm not one of those normal reactors who will just watch every series I start reacting to all the way through. I will drop shows if I am not enjoying it. I will not sit through and force myself to watch a show if I'm not enjoying it, because that would not be good for the reactions, and it would not be good for, well, honestly, my mental state. It's just not a good thing for anyone to put themselves through something that they actively do not like for any reason, pretty much. So yeah. But yeah, so that's the deal with what's going on with this. Just wanted to get all that out of the way. That being said, I know nothing about this episode. I wouldn't expect to, because it's so old at this point and no one really talks about it. But I didn't like see the title or anything ahead of time. I don't know what the episode's about. So we're just going to have to see and hope that this really starts amping upward in a very, very positive way for the show. Especially since we are on the cusp of reaching the halfway point. So we'll see. That being said, we're just going to get this started. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the... Okay, and we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, so this episode gave us the next stage of things. We are moving into the playoffs, as it was put. The final 6 competitors in this qualifying race, and 3 of them will move to the main race on Oban. And there's going to be like a series of races, so like one loss won't just disqualify you automatically. Which is good, because we saw both Ica and our main Earth team lose in this in their first race of the playoffs. And we also had a couple other side things happen in this episode. First off, what's his face? Why can I not think of his name right now? Rick, I think it's Rick. He's just completely disappeared, and we get to see what he's doing now. He is trying to find the source of the explosion that caused well, all the problems, really. He tracks it down to this one dude who sells parts and whatnot. The dude tries to give him the slip. He chases him down, catches him, and is apparently taken to where the info that he wants is. The person who hired this dude. But nothing's ever actually explained. Because it's like, one scene we're seeing, he like catches the dude and he's like, "You're gonna take me there." And he's like, "Yes, yes, of course, just don't hurt me." And then the next time we see them is at the very end. They're in this like tent or building or something. Rick's just walking away, just leaving. And the next thing we see is the one dude being apparently killed or something by his master, the guy, I guess, who might have hired him. It's so unclear and so just, it feels disjointed. It feels like there needed to be one more scene in there of Rick being led to that place and things being explained, like, okay, is this where he was meant to be led? Was this a dead end? Or did they go there and the master wasn't there or something? There's missing information that makes that, like, scene, the one scene going into the next scene make absolutely no sense and just feel completely disjointed. Then we had the entire thing with Molly and Ika. So Molly is just roaming around and everything, and she ends up coming upon Ika's garage. She sees Ika training sword fighting, I guess, for some reason. His trainer's telling him, like, "Oh, this is why you lost the race." It's like, what does this have to fucking do with the race? Like, maybe you could say it, like, helps with the reflexes or whatnot, or his focus, but it's like, it seems so far disjointed from each other. Sword fighting compared to being a pilot. I don't know. But either way, so Molly and him end up having this talk and everything, and about how they both lost and everything, and it was just so uninteresting. And the entire time it's basically like, yeah, you love each other, we get it. Because it's like, that's all it's really building up with that they have a thing for each other. And it's like, I'm not against that. I'm not against the idea of them being into each other. I'm not against even the idea of them maybe even just straight up getting together in the end. Not at all. But it's like, it's pushing that kind of idea on us really heavily, as if we don't get it already. Like, this was super obvious already, like in the past episodes and stuff. Why are they still trying to, like, force the idea, like, oh, it's something new, it's something you have to be seeing this? And it's like, oh, come on. I guess a way to put it is, it's so heavy-handed. And at this point, when it's already super obvious they have a thing for each other, it shouldn't be that heavy-handed. Don Wei was a lot nicer in this episode, and was definitely a lot more accepting and supportive and encouraging towards Molly and all. And I'm not going to say it felt out of place, but it felt like that he turned around a little too quickly. Because it's like, I'm fine with him starting to warm up to them and starting to encourage them and be supportive and everything, especially considering the circumstances. Unlike Molly, I don't think it came off as fake, though. I don't think it came off as like, oh, he didn't mean it. No, I very much think he did, based on the way he said it and everything. But the problem is, I think that's the issue, that he did mean it. Because I feel like he just kind of did a 180 way too quickly. It didn't feel like a natural progression to this point. Like, he's just suddenly nicer and more supportive and everything, and just encouraging and saying nice things and all. It's like, okay, sure. It just feels like it happened too quickly. And the only thing that could really kind of explain it is the way he found out about the grand prize, about the Any Wish thing. And You could say that maybe he's turned himself around because he realizes the importance of this grand prize and stuff, but it still just feels really out of place in its in the way it's handled. This episode also featured a lot of cliche lines in terms of the writing. It just really felt so fucking cliche. And I've said before, cliches aren't inherently bad. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure uses cliches up the wazoo. But the difference is that JoJo uses its cliches in a clever way that actually makes them come across as unique and fresh, which is extremely impressive because it's creative with those cliches. It doesn't just use them, it uses them in different ways. And in some cases, it makes fun of them when it uses them. But this is just straight up using the cliches. It's just straight up blatantly being cliche as fuck. And the problem with that is it doesn't come across as interesting or creative. It just comes across as meh. They're not even like really good cliche lines necessarily. A lot of them were just very cringy, if I'm being honest. Overall, this episode really didn't help anything for me, considering my thoughts on this series. It wasn't like altogether terrible, but there's also the fact that during the race, this opponent, this Tauros guy, was just made to be completely unbeatable. And it's like, even when Molly had this great idea of using the hyperdrive and everything, the fact that Tauros was just like completely unimpressed by it to the point where it's like, oh, I basically expected you to do that. Now I'm bored. Let me show you what I can do. And he just completely destroys them, figuratively and literally. And it's like, oh my God, really? Like, here's the thing. The completely overpowered enemy thing can be done well, but I feel it has to be a character that's been built up. Having some random enemy come in and just be overpowered as hell, especially someone who you know is not going to be that major of a character, and someone who you especially know is not even going to make it into the top three. Like, let's be honest, we know who the top three are going to be. It's going to be the Earth team, it's going to be Ica, and it's going to be that Shadow dude. The creepy-ass Shadow dude, who is, I'm thinking, implied in this episode to be the one behind the crash that killed Molly's mother. It's definitely going to be those three. It's super obvious. So it's like, this guy is just like some random dude who's just like super OP in this race for no valid reason. It's basically like he's like almost like an end game boss for a story arc rather than just some first race enemy for them to face in these playoffs. It just feels completely unnatural and poorly handled. Like the Shadow dude, I expect him to be excessively OP. And OP, I know, is a weird term to use in terms of racing, but you know what I mean. Because they're actually building him up. And yes, we did see that he defeated Ike on this episode, but at the same time, they didn't like really go into it as much. And they're building him up. We know he's going to race against Ava at some point. At least it's definitely implying that. Probably not until the main race, though, I'm thinking. He's probably not going to race against Ava until then. But for sure, he is going to be a big player who they're building up to race. And again, with this implication that he might be behind her mother's death, that's a massive deal. Huge deal. So it's like, that's being handled well. I acknowledge. But the fact that they brought in this Toros guy and it just feels so unnatural. And honestly, the race went by too quick. Much more of the episode should have been the race. They should have scrapped the entire thing with Molly and Aika and just replaced that time with more of the race. It just felt like it went by too quick, which also, again, makes this Toros guy even more just OP. Makes him seem even more just unbeatable. And that's not a good thing for just some rando racer, basically. That's basically what he comes down to. It just doesn't feel natural for the progression of the show and for the characters and their roles that are clearly presented here. It's just, it's a little irritating if I'm being at all honest. And I just don't feel like they're handling a lot of this properly at all. There's so much of this that I feel is just like either completely poorly paced, too stupidly cliche, or just really unnatural in its execution. And I don't know if it might be better in the original Japanese, but I couldn't even find the original Japanese. It's not on the site I use. And even if it were, it's like the story and everything is probably still the same. The pacing is still going to be the same. It's mostly just the dialogue that would be fixed, I'm sure. Like, with the OP thing, let's compare it to probably one of, if not the most OP villain I've seen in the reactions I've done, all the reactions I've done. And that's Diavolo from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Vento Arreo, or Golden Wind if you prefer. Diavolo is so obnoxiously OP. With King Crimson at his side, he is just completely OP. Yet, he had been built up from the very beginning of the series. The boss of Passion had been a big thing from the very start. So it felt like it was naturally earned for him to be OP. Like everything had been working up to him. All these other stand users, the execution squad who had been trying to eventually hunt down the boss's identity, Trish's introduction, everything had been building up. We wanted to know, okay, who's the boss? What is his stand, and how the fuck is our heroes gonna take him out? Our hero's going to take him out. And how overpowered is he going to be? Especially after we've already had villains like Dio and Yoshikage Kira in the past parts of JoJo. So, by having Diavolo and his King Crimson be so overpowered, it feels like it's been worked up to and feels more natural in its execution. This Toros guy, it's just like, oh, we've never even heard of him before this episode. He just randomly appears because it's the playoffs, the final 6 teams in this preliminary round. And he just, like, is completely OP. He's just like, oh, basically expected them to try something like the overdrive trick Molly tried. And it's just like, oh, I'm just completely bored by you idiots. Let me show you what I can do. And it's like, boom, race over. It's basically like the instant he did that, you knew there was no chance. The instant, honestly, most of the race, you knew there was no chance. The way he was racing seemed very deliberate. Even when Molly would pass him by and stuff, everything seemed like he was going to win, no matter what. And you could kind of say that's a little bit of build up to that, but not enough. Not for as badly as he did defeat them. And not for as overpowered as he seems in terms of the racing. Honestly, I think the only person who logically would be able to beat him in the race at this point would be that Shadow guy. So it's just like, it feels so out of place. So poorly handled. And that gets into the next thing. Like, I just spent like according to my recording timer, 16 minutes about bitching about this episode, tearing it apart in terms of how I viewed how everything was handled and executed within the story, the characters, all of that, the plot points. And in my pre-thoughts, I mentioned how I don't plan to drop this unless I really have no interest in continuing either watching or reacting to it. And I talked about how I didn't want that to be this soon. And you know where this is leading. Because the issue here is that this episode really did irritate me in so many ways. I mean, it's not like it just straight up pissed me off like other episodes or characters or whatnot have done with shows. In some cases, just shows in general. It's not like it just outright pissed me off or anything. But it's just like there was way too much wrong, and I just don't care anymore. That's the thing. It's like that's kind of how I feel like my reaction might have came across too. I don't know if that's true. You guys will have to tell me that, because you'll be able to tell more than me because I tend to have a bias because I'm watching myself, so I don't think certain things come across a certain way while other people might. um, I felt like the entire time I was just done with everything. Like it's just like I wasn't excited or interested anymore. I just had no sense of care regarding it. I didn't care anymore. I just was like, do whatever the fuck you want because I don't care. That was pretty much what was going through my head almost the entire episode. The only part that actually really did interest me was the fact that we were moving on to these final six, the final playoffs. But everything after that, it's like, and then so many of the scenes had such poor transitions, which really took me out of the immersion as well, and just really helped add to the fact that I just don't care for the series. Let's be honest, when I first started watching it, I didn't know what to expect. Because, again, as I said before, I had known about the series when it was first airing and stuff, but I never really watched it actively. I might have checked out maybe a little bit every now and again, but I never actively watched it. And so I didn't know what to expect, and eventually I lost interest, as you know. And I dropped it because of that. And when I picked it up, it was because I didn't want to drop any shows. I felt it was wrong to drop shows unless I really had no, like, zero interest in continuing. I was only kind of met on it when I first dropped it. So I brought it back, and the last episode was enjoyable. It was funny. It was entertaining. And then this episode is everything but. It's just so bad in comparison. And it sucks ass because the last episode was enjoyable enough that it got me interested again, at least to a small degree. But this one just ruined that for me, just completely. Just dashed my interest. And I don't care anymore. I don't have any interest in continuing to react to this. I don't have any interest in continuing to watch this show. It's not like with other shows that I've dropped where it's like, oh, I might continue to watch this with like somebody's reactions or maybe on my own time. No, I don't even want to continue watching this. It's just, I don't care about it anymore. I just don't want to subject myself to it. I don't care. I have no other better way to put it. And again, I really hate that. I really hate that that it's come to that. And again, I really didn't want it to happen this soon after bringing it back, only 2 episodes after bringing it back. But as I said, any show I react to, even if it's a donation award, is subject to being dropped if I don't like it. And I'm not going to force myself to watch anything if I don't enjoy it. I still have another show in the anime slot for donation rewards, though. One last one, A Place Further Than the Universe. That will take over starting next week. It's another one I have pretty much no knowledge about. But since that is the last one, just as a note, if you wish to donate, you don't have to wait for a mega stream to do so. You can donate to the channel anytime, whether donating money to my PayPal or donating to donating a game on Steam. And you can have me, you can add anything to the list, basically. Because here's the thing, I have, after Place Further Than the Universe, I have no anime or cartoon reactions for the donation awards. Everything else is a movie reaction, apart from Critique of Outlast, which is still going on, and then one other YouTube thing that was just donated for yesterday. Everything else is, you know, the YouTube stuff and then the movies. So the thing is, if I end up dropping Final Space, or if I end up dropping Place Further Than the Universe, there's not going to be anything to put in those slots. And if you can't donate, I'm not trying to force you to donate. Because if no one donates, and if those slots are just empty until the next mega stream, then they're empty. And there's just nothing I'm going to really do about that, I think. Because I want to keep, like, the layout the same. Wednesdays would be for specifically donation rewards. Which, at this case, if both of them ended up being dropped or whatnot, I would just, like, probably do the movie stuff and whatnot on Wednesdays instead. But, yeah. If you want to donate, feel free. You can talk to me about doing that if you want. But if not, hopefully Place Further Than the Universe is good. Again, I know pretty much next to nothing about it, so. But that will, again, start next Wednesday, joining in with Final Space for now. I haven't reacted to Final Space yet today, so hopefully that is a lot better. And honestly, I think it will be, if I'm being at all honest. But we'll have to see. In the meantime, I really do apologize for dropping this again, especially so soon. I was really hoping that this episode would be more like last week's and just raise my interest a lot more. And at the very beginning, I even thought it would, with the entire moving on to the next stage with the 6 teams left and all. But then it went in every bad direction possible for me. Well, maybe not everyone, but you get the idea. It just was not good. So I really do apologize. And we'll move on from there. We'll hopefully get into the good stuff. And again, if you wish to donate anything more and get a series for me to react to, that's fine. Or if you just want to leave it as it is, and maybe like we'll do movies and stuff on Wednesdays and whatnot, if I end up dropping these other 2 shows, then yeah, okay. Whichever one. Doesn't matter to me. But yeah, so that being said, I do hope that you enjoyed the reaction nonetheless. But for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.
And though you've come through many obstacles,